Control room, can you hear me? I can't hear the show.
Good evening, America. Happy Thursday. Welcome to the latest edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you, as always, in the nation's capital, where a lot of things happened today. President Trump got tic-tac, well, almost out of Chinese hands now. Amanda's going to bring you up to date on that in a second. But before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about accountability and FBI. Tomorrow morning, you're going to wake up to a major story at Just the News. It answers a question that we've tried to pose for the last 5 years. Did FBI agents themselves believe the FBI had become biased? Tomorrow, you're going to see not one, not two, not five, not 10, but scores of FBI agents telling their leadership in an internal memo after January 6th that they believe the FBI had become politically biased against the conservative movement and for liberals. And they cite extraordinary circumstances, extraordinary details, extraordinary statements. It's so rare for the FBI to speak up against their leadership internally, but this happened on Chris Wray's watch. Now, all the while, Chris Wray was telling Congress, we don't have a political bias problem, even though his own agents were saying day in and day out, they in fact had a political bias problem. The other thing we're going to answer for you, for the first time, we're going to be able to give you a specific number. How many plainclothes FBI agents were in the crowd and working the Capitol on the day of January 6th? Now, we knew there were 23 undercover informants. We got you that data a few months ago. Tomorrow, we're going to tell you an astounding number. Yes, it's a very large number of FBI agents that were on the scene when the riot was breaking out, all in plain clothes, all unable to be seen. Chris Wray would never answer that question to Congress. We're going to answer it for you with these documents we're going to make public. Meanwhile, on the issue of the FBI, and maybe one of the men who owns some of the legacy of that politicized FBI, James Comey, a grand jury in Richmond right now, is considering evidence about whether he lied to Congress in September of 2020. The statute of limitations coming up next Tuesday. Today, prosecutors presented evidence in that case. And remember what we told you a few weeks ago. Director Comey told Congress, I didn't ask anyone to leak classified information. Then we showed you a document a couple of weeks ago where James Baker, the chief counsel and top lieutenant to James Comey, said, no, I was asked by James Comey through the chief of staff to leak classified information to the New York Times in October 2016. That is what the grand jury is evaluating tonight. We'll let you know if during the show they make a decision or whether that gets kicked the next week, but we're keeping a close eye on that. And with that, I'm going to yield to my extraordinary partner. Every night she's got a lot more headlines. Amanda, I know you've been watching a lot of news today.
Yes, indeed, John. And we've got a few updates about the attack on that Dallas ICE facility yesterday that left 1 dead and 2 wounded. FBI Director Kash Patel said earlier today that the Bureau had found a, quote, high degree of pre-attack planning in suspected shooter Joshua John's home. And the FBI Director also revealed that the suspect downloaded a document titled Dallas County Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, which had, of course, a list of DHS facilities. Now, John's also, according to the FBI, conducted multiple searches of ballistics as well as searching for the, quote, Charlie Kirk shot video between September 23rd and September 24th. And we also found out that back in August, he searched out apps that tracked the presence of ICE agents. And they also found handwritten notes, one of which read, quote, hopefully this will give ICE agents real terror to think. Is there a sniper with AP rounds on that roof? So absolutely incredible. So we're going to get to more on this with DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin later on in the show. But turning now to President Trump, who signed an executive order just a little while ago, right before the show this evening, that will pave the way for an American-led investment group to finally take over the U.S. assets of TikTok. Now, the new deal allows TikTok's U.S. operations to split from Chinese company ByteDance and, by extension, the Chinese Communist Party. Now, the group is led by software company Oracle, and the American investment side of things will own a majority share of the app, but ByteDance will still have a 20% stake. So, John, that was a major move today, something that President Trump talked about on the campaign trail quite a bit.
He did, and he delivered it. Vice President J.D. Vance led these negotiations along with Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary. President Trump answered a very important question. Remember, Congress passed the law saying you have to divest or get out of the country, and you cannot keep control, China, of the algorithm that controls what people see. President Trump confirming today that he and President Xi have agreed the algorithm will be fully under American control. That was the big
That's the Motherlode.
Unknown up
That's
until
the
just a few minutes ago, but a big deal. You got to watch that live here in Real America's Voice. All right, we've got a great guest to kick things off today. He comes from a state that just went through that horrific shooting targeting the ICE van. He represents the state of Texas, as I mentioned, Congressman Keith Self. Sir, good to have you on.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
I want to start with what the president announced a few minutes ago. He promised to free TikTok from Chinese influence. From what you heard from the president, do you feel that he's meeting the mandate that Congress gave in the law?
Well, I think he did. And the algorithm, as you just briefed, is the important part. It's not the investment, it's the algorithm.
That's right.
Because TikTok has been a data vacuum of U.S. personal data. That's what we had to stop. And if what you report is true, then I think President Trump did exactly that.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Well, and Congressman, lest we forget that barely a year from now, it is going to be midterms. And I feel like with young voters, people who are just now registering to vote, that this issue is probably going to be a big one for them, don't you think?
Well, we had heard that so many people use TikTok, do business on TikTok. I am delighted that we have made the change. We have ripped that out of the communist Chinese orbit and brought it under the Americans so that we can continue to use it. Now let's just monitor to make sure that China is not stealing what we took from them.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, sir, we'd be remiss not to mention that Congress really led on this. Congress last year, before we had a President Trump again, took the lead on this, and that was such an important moment in that, and I know you were a big player in that. I want to turn to what happened in your home state. Another day, another assassin's bullet, another political inscription on the ammunition. Far-left violence seems to have become far too normal. Give us your thoughts on what happened and what we need to do to start to have a conversation to change this dynamic.
Well, we're starting to see copycat attacks by people. The writings, anti-ICE rhetoric on the bullets, but the planning that you just briefed on really concerns me because he'd been planning this for a while. But then the rhetoric that we hear, you cannot call ICE Gestapo. You cannot call the ICE facilities concentration camps without expecting someone that has a grievance to take action. And that's what we're seeing. And once one does it, then we start to see the copycat actions taking place. Yeah. That's exactly what this was. Now, we need to stop this now, which means we need to put long-range surveillance protection around the ICE detentions until we can cut this off.
Yeah.
Great point.
And sir, do parents have a role to play here? Because there are parents across America that are struggling with, teenagers and maybe young 20-somethings that are heavily involved on the internet. They are on the dark web. They are in these message and chat rooms, possibly getting radicalized. Should parents pay even more attention than they already are?
Well, that's a whole nother discussion, Amanda. But yes, absolutely. Parenting takes intentional monitoring of your kids, whether you do that through an app or whether you do that through personal interaction. Yes, parents need to be responsible for this. And what concerns me is the amount of mental illness that we've seen in some of the shooters. That is a concern because parents should know that. So to your point, parents need to be aware that if your child has mental challenges, then you need to be very aware of what they're looking at on the internet.
Yeah, so important. And that gaming platform Discord, we've seen too many of the violent offenders of the last couple of years have some connection to that, some radicalization there. I know that's going to be high on the list of things to watch. Sir, you have always been an advocate of law and order, and I know you also take seriously the role the FBI has, but also keeping it on course on its mission. Tomorrow we're going to release this document. It's an after-action report from the January 6th event, and it had agents openly saying we were used as political pawns. The FBI has become too biased. It treats conservatives different than liberals. It's scores of people, 50 pages of comments just like this from the rank and file of the FBI to Chris Wray. I know you want to fix this because I know you believe the FBI has an important mission. How do we get Kash Patel the tools, and how do we get the mindset back in the FBI that they don't see a political stripe when they're pursuing a case, they just see the evidence?
Well, believe you me, we've known this anecdotally for years now.
Yeah.
It sounds like you now have the receipts, and I think that should change the perception of the American people that, yes, Kash Patel has to make major changes in the FBI. We've got to get them back focused on their core mission, because if they're targeting their political enemies, they're not focused on their core mission, which means American citizens, American institutions are in danger. So let's get Kash whatever he needs to make sure that he can root out this, that he can change it back into the warrior ethos toward their core function. I couldn't agree more with you that the FBI must have a major orientation to their mission, because now that you're bringing the receipts, I think it'll be easier because the American people will be able to see exactly what we've known for years anecdotally.
Yeah, so important.
Sir, I know that Leader Schumer does not want to recognize that this could end up being a Schumer shutdown, but it sounds to me like the White House is looking at a shutdown as an opportunity to offload some federal employees with some mass layoffs. So it seems to me that Chuck Schumer is kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. He shuts down the government and Trump gets to knock off, more of the bureaucracy, or he, according to his voters, acquiesces and caves to the Trump administration. That's a bad spot to be in.
It's a horrible spot to be in, but I refer to it as a Schumer shakedown, because he wants to basically undo the one big beautiful bill, reinstate all of that spending. He wants to undo the rescissions package, the $9 billion. It's a horrible position. I don't know what his decision is going to be, but yes, the president and Russ voted OMB have put him in a tough spot.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Sir, one of the things I know you've been concerned about is the Democrats' effort and Schumer's effort to get Biden's COVID-era Obamacare subsidies back in, put those back on the taxpayers' dole, make them permanent as part of the shakedown. We're not in COVID anymore. We don't have a COVID pandemic, at least. What's going on here? Is this just another form of free health care?
Well, it's basically COVID-era temporary subsidies. No Republican has ever voted for an Obamacare subsidy. There was one vote originally not for subsidies. No Republican should be voting for this today. We're talking about massive amounts of money, $40 billion a year. With churn, they're talking about more than $335 billion over 10 years.
Wow.
These are massive amounts of money, often into the billions of dollars. You have the federal government paying insurance companies where there was no claim directly from the federal government to the insurance company. This cannot happen. These should be allowed to expire at the end of the year.
Absolutely. Sir, before we let you go, I want to ask you about something that's going to be happening tomorrow. You're introducing a bill regarding illegitimate Palestinian officials. This is, of course, as we have a lot of these Commonwealth nations and others that are officially recognizing Palestine, whatever that even means geographically. But sir, tell us about the bill.
Well, the bill basically says you can't have a visa until you do certain things, and they're not going to do certain things. Look, Palestine, as they're defining it, is a figment of their imagination. It's ethereal. It does not exist. Outside, they still think outside of Israel and Gaza, they think the two-state solution still exists, is still a possibility. It's not. You go inside Israel, you go inside Hamas, they realize they have done grave damage to this two-state solution. This will help by not giving them visas for any reason until they meet certain criteria, which I have no doubt they won't meet.
A great and common sense idea. Something that comes out of Texas a lot. Texas has got a lot of common sense, and they're lucky to have you representing them. Congressman Keesel, what a great honor to have you on the show today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, what a great conversation. Thanks for being with us. All right, folks, one of my favorites. I've been in this town 35 years, and it's always hard to know when an agency is going to be transparent or not. Our next guest, the Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security, Tricia McLaughlin, has hit a new standard. She's always up front, always getting us information quick. She's going to join us with the very latest on what happened to that ICE facility in Dallas right after these messages. Hey, folks, if you're a homeowner like me, you need to listen to this. In today's AI and cyber world, scammers are stealing home titles and your equity is their target. Here's how it works. Criminals forge your signature on one document, use a fake notary stamp, pay a small fee with your county, and boom, just like that, your home title has been transferred out of your name. And that's when the problems begin, because they start taking out loans using your equity and even sell your property. And you're not even going to find out it's happened until you get a collection or foreclosure notice months later. That's a nightmare, right? So when's the last time you checked on your home title? Well, if you're like me, the answer is never, right? You need to do something about that right now. That's why I've partnered with Home Title Lock, so you can find out today if you're already a victim. Use my promo code JTN at HometitleLock.com, and you'll get a free title history report and a free trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts to any changes that might happen, and if fraud does happen, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it. That's a good deal. Find out why I trust Home Title Lock. Go to HometitleLock.com and use the promo code JTN. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code JTN.